But if you don't have a will, unfortunately, the courts and the law decide what happens, and they don't always make the best decisions tax-wise or whatever. You know, they may default to your kids, but if you got a unique situation or a friend you wanted to take care of or whatever, they're not going to do that for you.
Right. Hey, my name's Misty and I am a manifesting coach, and I have a very special guest today, my friend Jessie Hearin, who is an attorney and practices law. I asked him to come on today to give us peace of mind about something that may be on a lot of our minds right now with the uncertainty that's going on in the world with the coronavirus. And so even though this is not Jessie's actual practice of what he does in law, he is very knowledgeable about so many things, and whenever I have a legal question, I always contact him. Hey, Jessie.
Hey, Misty, good to see you.
It's so good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to do this. And so basically that's what I would like to talk about. You know, I always try to talk about positivity, and it's how I try to live my life, but I realize that right now a lot of people might be struggling with that. And the fear of the unknown can really take control over someone and send them down a rabbit hole. And I read something the other day that said that 90% of the things that we worry about never actually happen, never actually manifest into our lives. So I wanted to talk to you today, maybe just a little bit, if you could give us some clarity on a will.
Yeah, well, I think that this pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, gives us an opportunity to think about some things that we don't always think of.
Right.
And I know that that's a topic that some of us just avoid because it's just not fun to think about. We don't like to think about our demise or what would happen if we were gone.
Right.
But this is a great opportunity if you have a will and it might need some updating, or if you don't have a will, even if you're relatively young, it's just smart to have something that indicates what you would like to happen. It will also provide a tremendous comfort to the people that you care about, who will have to try and put the puzzle together afterwards. So not only is the will the core document, but there's some other things that I'm going to suggest that people consider doing that will help their loved ones not end up with a year of wondering where the assets are or what they are supposed to do, or get in a fight with a relative because it's unclear, or any of that stuff that really can be avoided, you know?
Yeah.
The will is actually the simplest part, unless you have a very complex estate where you might have a lot of businesses and things like that. And then you're going to really have to get with CPAs and lawyers and spend some time on that. There can be tremendous tax implications on the way you set something up.
Okay.
For example, you could have a life insurance policy and for $500,000 and one child that you wanted to give it to. And if you set it up one way, that child would pay income tax on that $500,000. If you set it up another way, they would pay no income tax on it. So think of
so it's more than just deciding who gets what. There's a lot more that needs to be.
There's a little bit of estate planning even in the simpler estates.
Okay.
But the second part that people and if you need to get a will, or you need to get a will updated, I highly recommend that you go seek an attorney who specializes in that,
right?
So that it'll meet all the formalities. And if there's any magic language or anything that everybody's doing because they know that's the smart way to do it, they can advise you to that.
Right.
It shouldn't necessarily be a huge investment to get a will done unless your estate is really complex.
Okay.
Of course, you can always find an attorney who will overcharge you, so shop wisely. But the other thing that people don't tend to do is there should probably be a letter. First of all, people need to know where your will is.
That is very important, because that has happened before, where people have taken the time to write out a will, or in certain states where you can handwrite a will, you need to check your state guidelines to see if that's even something that would hold up in court in your area. We talked about earlier. But if you have a handwritten will and you don't tell anybody where it is, your wishes are not going to be fulfilled.
Absolutely. Or if you have a life insurance policy and nobody knows it exists,
Right.
I hate to break your idealistic heart, Misty,
The
but that
insurance
life
company isn't going to
insurance
call me.
company is probably not going to call you up and say, by the way, did you miss this?
Right.
Um, so you want to sort of have an inventory, but you also want to have a map of, I have a copy in my safety deposit box at Hancock Bank. I have a copy with my lawyer,
Okay.
Fred Smith, who may or may not predecease you. You know,
Right.
Fred Smith may not be around.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to make sure you have a will, but you kind of have to calendar periodically reviewing it. You know, my children are no longer minors. I might want to do something different. I
Right.
might not want to have a condition. Maybe you gave them full access to money when they were 25 years old, but you wrote the will when they were 18. After they're 25, you might want to change that and simplify it, that
Right.
everybody gets a third or a half or whatever. The second thing in that letter, it's also an opportunity to say something to your loved ones that you might not feel comfortable. You can say it in your will, but you might not feel comfortable saying it in your will.
Mm-hmm.
You might just say, this is to my executor, my oldest son, and please share this with your brothers and sisters, and I love you very much, and you know whatever you feel you want to say at that moment to them. It can give them some comfort.
Right.
But then it needs to say, my will's here. I've got $10,000 in my suit coat hanging in the closet, so y'all won't have to talk to a judge in order to get some things done right after I die. Whatever, I'm not necessarily recommending that particular method.
Yeah, don't
you
hide
know.
in a tin can in the backyard.
The other things that people don't think of is, your passwords to bank accounts, online banking, your password to brokerage accounts if you have stocks.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. And who is your financial planner and all of those things? That's
Absolutely.
a really good point. I did not think about that. I want to go back to that password thing for a second, because a few years ago I had bought a new phone, and I didn't have time to stand in the store for them to transfer the data, and I was planning on going back to do it on a day off, and I was leaving to go on a trip. And I left my phone in the console of my truck, and while I was gone, someone got into the truck and stole my phone. And thank goodness that they weren't smart enough to turn off the find the locator thing. So It happened that when we got back a few days later, we found the phone. But when I reported it missing, the police officer specifically said, please tell me you don't have all of your notes on your phone, your passwords, because that's the worst place to put them. So where would be a good safe place to keep your passwords to let your family know, that where everything is?
I've seen two things that can be effective. A safety deposit box at the bank with the will, maybe some cash.
Right, because you might not be able to get into the checking accounts right away because of a probate situation, right?
Right. You might need a judge to sign off on something, and depending on what time of year it is and how urgent it is.
Well, and right now, a lot of court systems aren't even open for that, correct?
Well, they probably are handling it very, very slowly. Whereas on an average Tuesday, if you came to my office and say somebody passed away and we need authority to go to the bank account, we could probably walk over to St. Tammany Parish Courthouse and get the duty judge to give us okay if we had the right documentation. But today, I don't think that's available. You probably have to file it, and then, it might be delayed a couple weeks, might take even longer than that. So, so you want to have if you don't use the safety deposit box, you just need to find a secure place. the problem with relying on another human being is you don't know when you're going to pass away and when they're going to pass away.
And so, in some cases with this virus, the whole families have gotten sick and passed away.
And not to be the Grim Reaper here, but the way with this virus, you know, I was playing tennis with my daughter early on in this process, and I, you know, had a little hay fever that morning or something. So I'm sure we've all gone through this. Oh my gosh, I hope I don't have the virus, you know?
Right.
And I walked onto the court, and for the first time in my life, I said, you know, this might be the last time I play tennis with my daughter if I have the virus, you know?
Right.
I better enjoy it. You know, I made the best of it, but
Right.
this is an example of you could quickly be hospitalized and unable to take care of your own affairs.
Right. And it's so much more than this virus. You and I travel a lot. That is one thing that we love to talk about whenever we visit with each other, is how many different cities we're going to and the concerts that we're going to do. And I know we both are missing that right now so much, but on any day, this could happen. You could expire, your time could run out, where nobody's promised a tomorrow. And I think that right now this is a wake-up call to get all your stuff in order.
Yeah. And yeah, there's so many ways that you won't have the opportunity. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to get sick. Let me go get some things done. You don't always get that luxury.
Right.
The second thing you got to give some real thought to is who will be the executor, and then you need to. A lot of times people do this, make this will at some point in their life, and then they just forget about it, and circumstances change.
And they've gotten a divorce, and their ex partner is still in the will, and all kind of stuff can happen, right?
You know, so you need to calendar it to update it. You really should have an annual review just of your will. You know, it might take 5 minutes, but you know, has anything changed? Do I have a new asset? Do I have a new tax situation? Oh, I opened a business this year. How does that work? You know, who's gonna, you know, my business is making a fair amount of money, but I'm the only one who knows how to run it. Who's gonna do the manifesting moment of the day when Misty's not available? You know, I mean, we know Jackson is going to take over immediately, but I mean,
he's so good at it. I think you guys could just step right in.
But you know, if you had a business that was making $20,000 a month, you'd want to have a plan for it to continue to generate that income for a little while.
That's your legacy. Yeah.
For your heirs or you know,
or to be
your
sold,
partner or whatever. So thinking through that, what you really need to do is we tend to think of, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And, oh, I want to give this person this, and oh, I want to give them that. And that's important. But you need to look at it from the viewpoint of the person who's going to come upon the safety deposit box and have to try and implement your plan.
Right.
And that's like trying to tell your 96-year-old father how to do something on the computer when you're not standing next to him. That can be difficult, you know?
Right.
So it takes time to do it, and it'll make it a lot easier, and it'll make it more likely that what you wanted to happen happens and happens efficiently, you know? But it is I mentioned the life insurance policies. People have life insurance policies, they really ought to talk to an estate planner, whether that would be a financial person or a lawyer. Both can tend to be qualified on that issue, but it might be easier just to talk, if you have a financial planner, to talk to them and say, hey, I have life insurance policies. If I put these in a trust, are they tax-free when they go to my beneficiaries versus if they just go into my estate?
Okay.
And then for any of your friends who are lucky enough to be subject to the estate tax at this point,
we do.
Boy, they better have been talking. They better have
been
been talking to an attorney, because they can get a lot of assets outside of the estate through trust, so that the estate won't get cut in half by the estate tax of everything over 10 million or whatever it is these days. I haven't had to look at it that closely in my
Right.
personal.
We don't have any friends that are that fortunate yet. So
Not yet. Not yet.
yeah, right. Yet. Let's say that somebody is actually in the opposite situation where they have zero assets and they have a tremendous amount of debt. How do they, I mean, should they still leave like a will or something to say that who's responsible, how the estate pays that stuff off?
Well, I would spend less time doing that than working on the assets. Um, and I'm gonna plead ignorance here.
Okay.
I don't want to give bad advice to
Yes.
anybody. Um, I'd not, if the estate was basically a net negative,
Okay.
you know,
There's
didn't
nothing
have
to,
any property and owed $30,000 in student loans. I don't know if there's anything you can do to protect your heirs, or if you
from
hurt
taking on
people
the
by
debt.
naming them heirs, or help them by naming them heirs.
Mhm.
But I would, if I had a significant amount of debt that I was concerned about passing on to people I care about, I would get some advice on that.
Okay. And
It's a
there's,
good question. I just don't know the answer.
yeah, and I don't even know where that question came from, but I guess I was just thinking about some people are so well off and some people are, not right now, and it's even worse in this current financial situation. And I feel like that is also adding a lot of stress on people, worrying about whether they're going to pass away or not, and worrying about passing on all this debt or being able to pay it all off. And so I hope that this conversation that you and I are having, even though it's not an easy conversation to have,
Mhm.
and we don't have all the answers, it does at least spark something in someone to just start to control what they can control, right?
Yeah. And think very carefully about the executor. It's not a reward to your favorite child
No.
necessarily. It's to somebody who can handle what they'll have to do, which is kind of work through the paperwork and figure out how to get things through the courthouse and
Mm-hmm.
not alienate anybody in the process. And that's not always, you know,
Yeah, it's
your
not always
favorite
always.
child.
I'm not my dad. I'm not the executor for my dad's will. I am not a paperwork person. If I turn the camera around right now, I have a stack of stuff that I should be filling out and doing, but I'd much rather be having a conversation with you and, doing my thing over here. So my sister is very studious, and she is the middle child, and has been charged with doing all of that for my dad.
And that happens in a lot of families. And
It did not hurt my feelings. It was
yeah,
like a
you
burden
you
was
can
lifted.
explain it to your children that this is not the oldest one gets it automatically,
Right.
or this is my favorite child, or I trust them more than you. It's just, they're in a situation, they understand my affairs, they are an accountant in their real job or whatever.
Mhm.
But give that some thought on the practicality of it, not on don't make that an emotional decision, and
Yes.
just explain it to anybody who might think it was some sort of emotional
Yeah,
decision.
have these conversations right now while we all have this tremendous gift of time. If you aren't sick right now, you have this tremendous gift of time to be deciding all of these things and putting all these things into place. So that way, when all the orders have been lifted and we do go back to work, it doesn't slip to the back of our mind again.
Yep, that's true. And one more thing, there is I talked about maybe having a letter next to the will.
Mm-hmm.
You can limit those to certain audiences, and
Okay.
that can be very effective. You can have in a safety deposit box my last will and testament. Uh, Everybody's going to eventually get to read that who's at least a beneficiary or has an
Yeah.
interest. But you can have another letter to my oldest daughter who and just say something to her and say, by the way, I want you to get that picture of us that we had a painting done of. And you can break that down into little people. So if you want to have a personal conversation, that can be really enjoyable when you to the beneficiaries after the fact. I had a dear friend who passed
That's
away, and
special.
he just, he wrote a letter and he said, you're my friends and take care of each other. That's what we need to do. It was just really beautifully written and everyone got a lot out of it.
Yep.
And, you know, it's an opportunity to do that too while you're thinking
Yeah.
of it.
I know I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying not to get emotional, but I think that's probably the greatest piece of advice that I've heard in a very long time. Like right now, when everybody is thinking about this, like that their end could be in sight, thinking about every unfinished conversation that you had with somebody or haven't had with somebody that's close to you, you could write that down right now, and that they would have that forever. That's such a beautiful thought.
And hey, who knows, might even lead to you just meeting up with them or calling them and telling them that, the
Right.
fact that why do I want to wait till I'm gone to say it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's healthy spiritually.
It is. And
Uh,
I say to some of my clients that I work with in Epiphany that, if you've been through something and you have to forgive the other person and you have to forgive yourself to be able to move forward, to manifest good things into your life. And I mean, we've all made mistakes. And so not necessarily, sometimes you wouldn't call that person up and tell them, oh, I'm sorry, because they don't really give a care and they've moved on and you're the only person that's holding on to that. But even just to write all that down for yourself, to get it all off of you and know that you're in the right place to either stay here and prosper and have a positive and abundant life, like I always say, or you're ready to leave this chapter and go on to whatever the next thing is for you when you pass away.
and part of the fear when you do cough and you think, oh my God, I might have the coronavirus, is that you don't have everything, you haven't done everything you could. And
Right.
you can get this done now.
You can get this done.
And God forbid, if you think you're sick in the future, at least you don't have to sit there and go, oh my God, I let everybody down. I didn't get my act together.
Yes.
So it's a great opportunity. Not very romantic or exciting, but
I
time
know.
well
Well,
spent.
probably neither was cleaning out people's closets for them either. But I mean, it's definitely, I agree with you 100% when you say that this is the great opportunity to get these things handled.
So we can go to Paris soon, okay?
Right. We're ready. The tickets are going to be hopefully inexpensive, and we'll all be getting back to normal soon, whatever our new normal is. Jessie, I can't thank you enough. I really wanted to have this conversation for my own personal benefit, and I wanted to check in with you because I miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you in real life again.
We miss you too. And I give free advice during haircuts. It's
That's
not
right.
necessarily solid, but
Jessie is part
yeah.
of my haircut family, the 50 people that I kept when I closed down my former business. And you can see why, because he's so great to talk to. We always have the best conversations.
And she's not responsible for my current haircut because I couldn't get to her for this last one.
I know, everybody. That is the funniest thing right now with all these memes and all the things that are on Facebook. I probably get like 30 of them a day from the 50 people that I do see, including my father and his partner. They call all the time, like, when can we get a haircut? And I'm like, as soon as the governor says it's okay. So, all right, Jessie, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody that you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I hope you're enjoying these videos that we are putting out for you right now. We want to make sure that you are still living a positive and abundant life in this time that seems negative, but really so much positivity could come out of it. So thank you, Jessie, and everybody else. Happy manifesting.
Thank you, Misty.